The U.S. administration, led by incoming President Donald Trump, is set to take power starting January 20th, 2025. There is a strong possibility that this administration will impose tariffs on many countries, including Canada and Mexico. Based on media coverage, Canada could face tariffs of up to 25% on almost all exports starting as early as January 20th. Reasons for the imposition of these tariffs have so far been explained two ways.
The Canada-US border is not as secure as it should be, and Canada needs to increase security on the border. And until that happens, tariffs will be imposed. However, Donald Trump has also stated that the reason for the tariffs is because of a trade imbalance. He claims that the U.S. is subsidizing Canada due to the trade imbalance. Politicians and economists in both countries are taking the strong possibility of tariffs seriously. Based on past threats and actions by Donald Trump during his last presidential term, it is likely that tariffs will be imposed. However, the form and exact timelines of these tariffs is unknown. Since this issue and the threat of tariffs was only made public in late 2024, there has been very little chance to address the apparent issues behind the reason for tariffs. How can Canada address tariffs imposed by the United States? Canada can respond to tariffs imposed by the United States by negotiation with the United States, with retaliatory tariffs or a combination of negotiation and retaliation. The nature of the response will depend on what products a tariff is applied to, how much the tariff is for each imported product, and the timeline of when each tariff is implemented. Why tariffs are a bad idea for both Canada and the United States. Tariffs will make the cost of products more expensive in both countries. Adding a tariff to a product is equivalent to a store increasing the price it sells a product. Both countries have dependencies on the other country for products. Even if each country uses a product that can be obtained in their own country, it may not be available at the quantity necessary. Also, possibly infrastructure may need to be built to meet the demand. When it comes to food, variation in weather may mean that a certain product, such as grain, may be more abundant in one region, one year, and another region the following year. Having an expensive trade of these products between the regions helps to reduce the possibility of food shortages and higher than average cost of specific items. Certain products, such as heavy oil, which is a major export from Canada to the U.S., is much more abundant in Canada. Heavy oil is used to make industrial products such as asphalt and plastics. Many U.S. refineries are built to process heavy oil and cannot process lighter grades. This means that tariffs applied to heavy oil will make constructing roads and structures and producing products that use heavy oil more expensive in the United States. Tariffs will also lead to higher administration costs, since imports will need to be tracked and classified to determine the final cost. Why tariffs are likely to be worse for the Canadian economy than the U.S. economy. Tariffs applied to imports on both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border will make things more expensive in both Canada and the United States. There are a few reasons why it may hurt the Canadian economy more than the U.S. economy. The United States has a much larger economy than Canada. The U.S. population is 9 times that of Canada's population, and therefore has a larger tax base. Federal revenues in Canada are approximately $500 billion Canadian dollars per year, or $350 billion per year, whereas the revenue of the U.S. government is approximately $5 trillion per year. This means that the U.S. government brings in over 14 times the revenue at the federal level compared to Canada. Looking at the current state of both economies, on average, people in the United States are more likely to weather higher costs than people in Canada. This is because more people in Canada are living month to month. Housing costs are much more expensive in Canada than the United States. Therefore, more households are spending a higher percentage of their income on mortgages. In many areas in Canada, people have been hit harder than the United States by rising costs. In many cities in Canada, people using food banks has tripled over the past few years. Due to policies and taxes in Canada, investment has dropped significantly over the past decade. This is due to higher taxes, including the carbon tax, higher business taxes, and less favorable policies with more red tape and investment hurdles. It is also because, over the past several years, Canada has repeatedly changed the rules and regulations that affect many large projects. This creates instability and uncertainty in the investment market, and adds higher risk for both companies and individuals compared to the United States and other markets. Over the past few years, the Canadian dollar has been continually devalued relative to the United States dollar. This is partially due to the uncertainty around investing in Canada, and also very high spending at the federal level. This includes the printing of high volumes of Canadian money to pay for social programs, a federal workforce which has grown immensely over the past decade, and transfers to provinces. This has also caused inflation, which has had the effect of devaluing people's savings and Canadian investments, which makes it more difficult to weather bad economic conditions. Also, in times of hardship, such as the recent global pandemic, investors will turn to larger, more stable economies, such as the United States. Higher costs in Canada for many products has reduced disposable income for many households. This has reduced spending and slows down the Canadian economy relative to what it was when costs were lower and disposable income higher. Overall, the United States is in a much better position to withstand increased costs than Canada and the average Canadian. Where do we go from here? Generally, we have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst. We know from the last Donald Trump administration that he governs from a business perspective. The government will set the stakes high, and it is very important how other countries, including Canada, respond to the challenges that will be presented. Canada should fully expect that negotiations will be a large part of the relationship with the United States under this administration. There's a very good chance that setting the tariffs so high, at 25%, is to put the United States in an extremely good position for negotiation. Canada should remember that there are both positives and negatives of having the United States and Canadian economies intertwined. Canada should continue to accentuate the positives through examples and show how the relationship is much more of a benefit than an encumbrance. Canada should also continue to emphasize the importance of its natural resources, especially minerals, petroleum products, hardwood lumber, uranium, and water. They should also emphasize the huge potential for increasing energy generation and export to the U.S. This is going to continue to be very important in a world that craves large amounts of energy for households, businesses, entertainment, and artificial intelligence platforms. Another point that Canada should make through the negotiations is that on the international stage, having two concerted voices is much more powerful than just one voice. This has historically benefited both countries, especially when standing up to unjust activities of other countries. For example, the appropriation of areas outside the other country's territory or the suppression of minority cultures within a country. This partnership could greatly benefit both countries in the years ahead in areas such as Arctic sovereignty and the threat of exploitation by countries that don't care about harming sensitive regions. Canada should also state how important having specialized mobile resources in both countries can benefit each other. A prime example is the current fires in Los Angeles, in which many Canadian provinces have sent resources to help overcome. This has been an incredibly mutually beneficial advantage that many countries of the world do not enjoy. In order to get the best possible outcome, Canada needs to negotiate from a place where they present the facts, including both the benefits and potential damage that could occur in both countries through tariffs and imposing additional red tape to trade. Canada's negotiators need to remain calm, cool, and collected. If they approach the situation from a point of antagonism and negativity, they will play right into Donald Trump's hands. It is easy to ramp up actions, but very difficult to reverse a situation where relations become increasingly strained. No matter what form this new U.S. administration takes, it is imperative that Canada finds a way to work with them in as many ways as possible. In extreme situations, Canada can be a voice of reason. In an all-out trade war, both countries and their citizens will be negatively impacted. Based on both countries' current economic statuses, the United States would be able to withstand negative impacts better than Canada. It's very unlikely that the United States would be the first to blink.